Press play. He's the voice of the intersection of marketing, tech, and popular culture. Thinking is his commodity. DJ, data punk, stylish sock collector, and author of the book Disruptive Marketing. Jeffrey Cologne is your host of Disruptive FM, the marketing podcast for eccentric minds.
Episode of Disruptive FM, the marketing podcast for eccentric minds. I'm your host, Jeffrey Cologne, broadcasting for a special May Day version here in the lovely Emerald City of Seattle. This is episode 45, and on this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence in marketing. Also, two new apps you should know about for what's next in live marketing. One's called Talkshow, the other one is called Anchor. And then also a little bit about why mass media might be morphing into something else, mainly because it is feeling a huge force when it comes to how it works based on our social media behavior. All that and more on this week's episode of Disruptive FM. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. We are at Disruptive FM. You can also follow me individually as the host. I'm at DJGEOFFE. That's at DJ Jeffy, or just do a search for Jeffrey Cologne. That's Geoffrey, last name Cologne, Colon, so British phonetic spelling for the first name, Spanish phonetic spelling for the surname. And of course, we love talking to everyone, so if you want to communicate and participate in the conversation, make sure you use hashtag DisruptiveFM. So last week I was in Orlando for a wonderful event, and there was a great article that bizbash.com has posted this past week. What disruptive marketing means for the way brands and planners communicate. And just a little bit of background on this. What they had talked about was the conversation or the presentation that I had given at Digital Now, which is a conference for association executives. And I love this article because it's really good. Basically, it's about how disruptive marketing is the spread of ideas to people from people based on purpose. We are now seeing a major swing in terms of what people communicate and how they communicate. And it's very unlikely that brands are going to be able to reinforce or persuade people what to do in this day and age. Most communications is persuading people to interpret information in a particular way in which they feel inspired, and then those people can then go out and influence others. So this is another reason why we see such a rise in influencer engagement and marketing. Also, the other thing the article noted is we live in a post-remix world. So in the old world, companies created their messages. Now people look at the materials and information being shared by companies and then often spread those ideas with their own interpretation. So how do we think about crafting messages that people will remix into their own verbiage and wording, or media for that matter, and then share? So how do we inspire people to take action based on our purpose that we are trying to drive? The benefit, of course, is that messages coming from individuals, when they put their own spin on it, can be construed as more authentic. So it's interesting because I still see a lot of one-way conversation with a lot of brands and companies on how they communicate online. It's almost as if they don't realize how these channels are different, that there's a huge two-way means of communicating with these channels compared to sort of a one-way amplification. And then the other thing in the article that I love to call out is that face-to-face events are more important than ever. The development and adoption of technology has actually helped to boost the value of events. And they quoted me here where I noted that I used to go to a lot of events around between 2007 and 2010. And there were a large amount of people who just said, I don't really need to go to those events. I don't have the budget for it. It's possible that there's, a huge, maybe the 2008 recession had a lot to do with it. And people felt, hey, I'm going to just explore how I communicate online, solely online. And now what is happening is that's been inverted. We're so immersed in online that we are craving human connection again. And I truly believe that. I think if you go to any event, people try to meet people who they think are going to be at that event, especially the speakers, in advance. And if they don't do that, they try to connect with them at the event and then continue that relationship online. So again, it is crucial that you attend as many in-person events as possible, I think, moving forward, to really have an effect on business. People really do remember when they meet someone in person more than when they just meet them online. And it's going to be fascinating because I'm going to be in New York in early June, and there are a number of people I'm actually going to meet for the first time in person who I have been talking to forever online. So a couple of years. I'm going to actually meet a person that I've known for years. He was at BuzzFeed back in the day, now runs his own company. And I've probably been talking to him on Twitter and LinkedIn for 4 years. But ultimately, I think to take any relationship to the next level, you got to meet people in person, because they'll remember meeting you in person and be well, I don't know if they'll be happy about that. I was going to say they're happy about meeting you. They'll remember that. There's that memory is ingrained in the fact that they have met you in person, so you have an elevated status compared to everyone else that they might be conversing with on social media. The same about another woman who I have been talking with for quite some time on LinkedIn. She actually wrote a review of my upcoming book. And of course, that's a necessity for me to make efforts to go visit her and meet her in person, considering she provided a quote from my upcoming book. Speaking of, make sure you pre-order a copy of the book, Disruptive Marketing, What Growth Hackers, Data Punks, and Other Hybrid Thinkers Can Teach Us About Navigating the New Normal. Out August 15th on Amicom Books, hardcover, July 15th on Kindle, and sometime in August also on audiobook, which I'll be recording. When am I doing that again? I think May 13th and 16th I'll be in the studio here in Seattle recording the audiobook, so I'm looking forward to that. So, yeah, really enjoyed Orlando, really enjoyed Digital Now. Next week, I'm going to be in Hamburg, Germany at the M2C conference. So we'll be broadcasting, or at least doing the podcast, live from Hamburg, Germany. Really excited about that. And of course, you can find all my speaking engagements at jeffreycolon.net/speaking. So check it out. And hopefully I'll be in a city near you sometime in the year 2016, or if not, hopefully in 2017. So, wanted to chat a little bit about artificial intelligence in marketing. Got to see a really great presentation this past week while I was on the campus of Microsoft from the distinguished James Whitaker. He is a PhD that works on a lot of new technology at Microsoft. And I loved his presentation. He has talked quite a bit about artificial intelligence and how it will be used to crunch a lot of data to help us when it comes to personalization and to build smarter systems, not just for our devices, but really for us as people. I think what's really interesting is how marketing will change as a result of artificial intelligence. There will be a huge creativity factor still necessary. What might change heavily is there may be less of a need for analytical crunching or data mining, because machine learning will do that for us. So it might actually be interesting in terms of, will right-brainers be more important than left-brainers in the next couple of years? Now, of course, I can't answer that question because we haven't gotten there yet, nor do we know if we even can get there. There are a lot of things we'd like to do, I think, with technology, but it still requires people to bring those innovations to life. But I think it's fascinating in the sense that one of the things that James had noted, and what I wanted to bring to my listening audience, for those who listen to this podcast, and I've been hearing from more and more of you, which is fabulous, because sometimes I think I'm talking into this microphone and nobody listens to the show, but the past couple of weeks I've been hearing from people from all over Europe, Asia, got a tweet from someone in South America. So it's great how this is becoming more global. But one of the things that James had noted in terms of his conversation was all of this technology, if we can actually make it work so that it makes our lives easier, we may be able to become human again, more human than we have in the last maybe 3 decades. And if you think about this, it's true. Because there's something not human about having to type on a device or plonk away on a small screen or being sort of fixated on a screen for long periods of time. It's not very healthy. It's something that we want to move away from if possible. And we can do a lot of that, I think, if we have systems that do a lot of the work for us. So that will be interesting in terms of, well, what does that mean for marketing? And of course, it's hard to answer a lot of these questions, not understanding really what the sort of personal experience will be in the next 5 to 10 years. Right now, I could tell you I know what a customer experience is because we know the technology that's around us. We don't know where that will be in the next 5 to 10 years. So it'll be interesting to see how artificial intelligence is integrated in more of our products and services, and to see how those products and services change over time based on how we communicate with those services. And of course, how we communicate is the essential reason for what marketers are trying to do to persuade you. So if most of the analytical and delivery mechanisms are taken care of by software, how will that really shape our creativity, our creative expression moving forward? Something to think about. Would love your answer, or would love your thinking or thoughts on the topic. Make sure you tweet to us at Disruptive FM on Twitter. Use the hashtag Disruptive FM. There's 2 platforms that I want to call attention to that are really changing the game when it comes to live marketing. Now, we've heard the terminology real-time marketing a couple of years ago when brands were trying to tweet around large events like the Emmys or the Oscars or the Grammys or the Super Bowl. Now what we have is the ability to go beyond those events and actually host content simultaneously around some of these larger events. So brands themselves are creating experiences in tandem with those events, but not necessarily relying on those events to drive their message or capture the attention of those who might be paying attention. And the two platforms that I think are really interesting that you should check out, one is called Talkshow. You can find them on Twitter at Talkshow. The other one is called Anchor, and you can find them on Twitter using hashtag... You can find them on Twitter at Anchor. Now, Talkshow is very unique because what it is as a platform is you are using a texting interface. So you log in, you have the app, and it looks very similar to short messaging service. And you're just basically texting. Now, you could be texting to a number of people who are your friends, or you could be texting to just the app itself. What it does is it takes all that information and it makes it public. So texts that used to be maybe between you and two other people, if you decide to take those public, you can amplify those. Now, before this scares anyone and they think, why would I want to do that? The communication side of the spectrum, or the merits of this form of communication, is huge because the app is aptly titled Talk Show. You could literally have a talk show with, let's say, you and 4 other of your friends in real time and let everyone know about it. So you literally could be someone who's influential as an author, and you could maybe message 3 of your other friends who are authors and say, hey, let's have a talk show, no pun intended, using this app called Talk Show. And let's do it every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time and tell everyone to tune in. Now, for those who think, hey, I can already do that. You know, there's tweet ups and Twitter chats and all of this communication that's existed for some period of time. The interesting thing, though, is Twitter chats, even though they're in real time, they're very hard to follow and navigate because you got to follow a hashtag. You probably have to use a dashboard system like a Hootsuite or a third-party platform. And then you have to follow all the conversations going on, and it can be a mess. This is a little different because it's keeping it amongst a smaller amount of people that you let in and say, hey, we're going to have this talk show. And it's only going to be, let's say, 3 to 5 of us. Other people can follow, but they have no ability necessarily to comment unless you allow them in to comment. So what this is actually doing is it's very much a social by design platform, but it almost goes back and reminds me of communications or media for much of the 20th century. I don't know how I feel about this just yet. I still have to use it quite a bit myself in the experimental phase. But again, what I like to do on this particular show is to let marketers know about what is possible. What can you use, again, as a tool? The tool isn't going to do all the creative work for you. You're going to figure that out because you have the creative mind to do that. You have the eccentric mind to do that. The app just helps you do it in a way where, or the tool, I should say, helps you do it in a way where you can get to the people you want to reach. And from there, they can make up their own mind based on the creative expression that you are delivering to them. So another form of communication I really think everyone should check out here, and again, I am a huge sucker for audio-driven applications, which of course makes sense. I mean, I do a podcast, so of course I love audio. But it's called Anchor, and you can check them out at Anchor on Twitter. I think what I really love about this is radio by the people. and they're based in New York City, and I want to definitely give them a shout out. I think this is going to be a huge game changer. I downloaded the app. I started using it right away. My mentor, David Brooks, who is a senior vice president at Ogilvy and Mather in New York, he was the first one that I saw use it about a month ago. He posted on his Facebook timeline his audio, and I immediately went to the iTunes store and downloaded it and played around with it. It's awesome. Basically what it is it's an audio-driven social network. The second you put the app up to your ear, you can begin recording. So you can record anything from, a couple minutes of a diatribe that you have to just sort of short snippets. You can ask questions to the larger community that people can reply to and answer. I think that voice connection is really wonderful about the network. I think it's really different from the other social platforms that we've seen. What I ultimately see from this, though, is Anchor not really living as its own standalone network, but someone buying it and integrating it into their own, like a Facebook, like a Twitter, like a LinkedIn, something of that nature. Because I do think that we are really moving into a world where audio is going to be the future of technology. We don't talk about it a lot because we see many companies who are pushing bots and messaging services, and that makes sense. Those are definitely must-haves in the future communications world. This conversation as a platform narrative is definitely something that is key. But what's usually left out of that is, well, wait a minute, if conversation is a platform, conversation usually requires not just texting, but communication. It could be someone speaking. How does that play into the future? Especially as headsets become smarter, earbuds become more intelligent. What someone may perceive as a hearing aid is actually an intelligence system. So, Anchor for me is fascinating because I think it's on the verge of where audio could be going. What also excites me about it is what still is a barrier to entry for many people, which is getting a high-quality microphone, getting some recording software, getting editing software, and distributing a podcast. Audio allows anybody to really get into the audio game, and not so much in long-form content, but short snippets. And that's fascinating in a social world, because while you are going to invest 30 minutes or more to listen to this podcast on a weekly basis, other people might not really be into that, and they might want short snippets or short information, 15-second sound bites, 1-minute sound bites, maybe 5-minute sound bites to learn something, or to possibly participate in a conversation themselves with their own voice. And I think that's what's going to be really fascinating about that network moving forward. And it makes sense on why they think it's radio by the people for the people, because anybody can download the app and begin participating right away. So it really ties into the producerist ethos that I talk about quite a bit on this show, as well as in my upcoming book, as well as in a blog post that I wrote in 2014 or 2014, I think. I'll have to look at it again, which is all about producerism as the new behavior as a result of all of our social media communication platforms that we utilize. So the final topic I wanted to talk about in this episode 45 of the podcast is mass media dying. Now, this is a controversial subject, but one that definitely needs to be discussed. And there's a reason why I think this is the case. While mass media still has a place in the world, One of the things that is going to cause havoc to it is the fact that more and more companies like Facebook and Google are not going to push a lot of traffic over to third-party websites. So for media players, this is going to be an interesting world that they're going to have to navigate, because they're not going to be getting all that traffic on their own website anymore. It's going to live within a news feed. Whether if you're on Facebook, it's going to be on a news feed, and it's going to live within search results, within the actual search engine results page, if you find that information on Google. So Google's actually going to keep you within that results page, within that feed, rather than sending you to a third-party website. So that's going to change how people work with media. That's going to change how people interact with media, especially mass media. The other thing that I think hurts mass media and why I think it's decaying or dying is we are not about a mass culture anymore. We are moving more toward a personalized culture. One where when we go to CNN.com, we don't want that to look similar for everyone who's going there. We want to have personalized information. We want things that come up on that news feed or that news site that is relevant to us because we have particular topics that we're interested in. We might be more into international news, so we don't want to know what's happening in our local neighborhood. We might be interested in international politics, so we're not interested in domestic politics. I mean, there's a lot of things that mass media doesn't convey to the mobile by design and social by design world that we currently live in. One is it is always constantly pushing a larger narrative, thinking, hey, if people are into this, then we can drive our ratings up, and if we drive our ratings up, we can obviously take more money from advertisers or potential advertisers, and then we can tell those potential advertisers, hey, this is who our audience is. The problem with that is advertisers want to reach people and individuals more than they want to reach mass scale audience. So that's going to cause a lot of havoc, because if you are a company that in the past said, hey, yeah, we want to sponsor this, this news source, this mass media source. The problem, of course, is that you're reaching a lot of people who aren't necessarily relevant. So you have to reach the mass before you can actually get to the few who are really relevant, hyper relevant to your cause or your company. And companies don't want to deal with that anymore. So I think they're trying to find ways of actually targeting their specific niche audience by going to specific niche audience sites. This is the whole reason why mass media is fumbling around, almost like they're fumbling around in the dark, trying to find the light switch. And why niche sites are doing really, really well. Because they can basically say, hey, this is who our audience is. It's a small audience, but when you're buying advertising through us, you're going to reach that audience, and we own that audience. Whereas if I'm going to mass media sites, they don't really own any audience. They couldn't tell you really who their followers are, who their fans are, who their power-hungry users are, because there's so many of them. And this is where the long-tail economics is going to trump mass, mainstream media audience that has existed for a very, very long period of time. So I'd love your thoughts on this as well, because this is definitely a controversial topic. Of course, mainstream media and mass media are always going to continue to talk as much as possible on how they're always going to be relevant. But if they really were relevant, I wouldn't be seeing them using so many forms of media that they don't really control like they could back in the day, unwittingly. You know, I almost see many of these mass media companies unwittingly using Facebook, unwittingly using Twitter to reach their audience, and now probably being forced to use the new Google search engine result pages in ways that they're probably not going to necessarily be happy about, because they're not going to get the traffic that they did at one time coming to their sites. And that's going to cause potential havoc for their advertising revenue models. So this is another reason why I see niche really taking off, especially with shows like this one where I'm just talking to specific audience. I'm not worried about mass marketers here. I'm not worried about mass audience here. It's great for the 50 to 100 people who probably listen to this, that if a sponsor comes along and says, hey, we want to sponsor your podcast, we love the topics you talk about, I could say, yeah, and so do the 100 people that are downloading it and subscribing to it and reviewing it on a weekly basis. They're really hardcore about it, and they will probably be really excited about a company that I decide to talk about, because they also know I'm not just going to take sponsorship money from anyone, because I have a larger purpose in life. I want to note to the audience and my audience that I have ethics, that I have a belief system, that I don't think it's just about taking money for the sake of taking money anymore. That's not how marketing is going to work. That's not how business is going to work. We have a lot to learn in this new century, and hopefully we can learn it together. Hopefully you enjoyed the latest episode of this podcast, Disruptive FM. Don't forget, you can find out all the information about the podcast at disruptivefm.net. Make sure you tell a friend. Also, we are all over the place when it comes to distribution now. We, of course, host the show on Spreaker. You should check them out at Spreaker, Spreaker. And we use their recording studio software. So if you are really into getting into podcasting yourself, check it out. It's great. They have a great app for iOS and Android that you can use to record a show, so you don't need a lot of expensive equipment. But if you do have a microphone and want to record in a more hi-fi manner, you can plug straight into a PC or a Mac and use their recording software to record shows. So that's one of the things that I'm really happy about using their software. I've been big fans and big proponents of them for quite some time. I found out about them back in 2012. An Italian-based startup. Always good to give support to my Italian friends. So we use Spreaker, but then of course you can find us all over the place. We're on iTunes. We are on the Google Play Music podcast store. We are on SoundCloud. We are also on Stitcher and TuneIn. Pick the channel of your choice. Type in Disruptive FM. Check out some of the episodes. Subscribe, review. Love it, hate it. That's it for episode 45. We'll catch you next time.
You've been listening to an episode of Disruptive FM, the marketing podcast for eccentric minds. Remember to subscribe to the show on iTunes. Purchase a copy of Jeffrey's latest book, Disruptive Marketing, on Kindle, hardcover and audio. Signing off from the city of Seattle. Press pause.